Okay, we're going to have Cheryl Deering up here now, who will be presenting school improvement work for CECC for the last time, since we now have appointed her to another position. A little bit about Cheryl's, too. It's going to look a little different than the other schools. I think many newer board members have probably thought about this, but their requirements are different even in the SILT process. They have other regulations that they follow, so she's going to speak a little bit to that. She still has a teacher team, though, that functions as her SILT team with teacher leadership. And actually, before, she wasn't really required 3 years ago when we put this in to do it, but she asked me to do it originally. She said, could I be part of that process? I want to do a school improvement plan. And I said, of course. And so she's been doing it ever since. So she'll go ahead and talk to you about that.
Thanks. All right. Yeah, I'm a one-woman show tonight. Sorry. My SILT members were not available tonight when the date changed for us. So we are a Champaign Unit 4 Early Childhood Center. And on the first slide for demographics, oh, I have the control. I'm control. So do I push the... Okay, perfect. All right, so our demographics are, we really do have a high population of MLL children. We have currently a Spanish dual language program in our building. We are also, we have a high population of French Congolese families and then many, many, many other ethnicities. We also have a pretty high concentration of students with IEPs that are non-speech. Partly because when children come into our building, oftentimes they're referred through the state's early intervention program, and that we have to determine their eligibility for special education services prior to turning 3. So most of those children do qualify for special education services. And then through the nature of our program, we have to screen every child that comes through our program because we are funded under the state's Preschool for All grant, and it requires that we screen every child, and then through that process, that's child find, meaning we are finding children that we suspect have delays, and then we go through the evaluation process. We also receive referrals. So we are the space in Champaign Unit 4 for any child the ages of 3, 4, and 5 that may qualify for special education services. So our population does tend to be a little bit high for that. And then, the majority of our students, as you can see, there are Black. We have many other race and ethnicities. It is a very diverse population, as you can see. And those are just some pictures from we had the Children's Discovery Museum come to our school it was a couple months ago, and they provided a program. The students really enjoyed it. So as far as the Preschool for All grant, as I said, we're funded through that grant, largely through the grant. The district also funds part of our program as well. But we are required to determine eligibility for the program looking at their pre-academic skills, social emotional skills, and we also have to do an at-risk assessment. And so we have to ensure that our enrollment includes at least 80% of students deemed at risk. Those at-risk factors include, but are not limited to, at 50 or 100% below federal poverty level, homeless or ward of the state or in foster care, a family where the primary caregiver did not complete high school or does not have a GED, or a parent was a teen at the birth of the first child, a child or parent born outside of the U.S. or a language other than English spoken in the home. Our screening indicates delays or a possible referral for a special education assessment, and anyone that is parents who are active duty military or they have a caregiver incarcerated. So those are the big risk factors. We have some others that are assigned less points, but we actually have to go through, talk to families, get all this information, and determine their risk factor and determine their eligibility for our program. Oops, I went the wrong way. Okay, so looking at instructional excellence, we have also participated in Focus Schools this year, which has really been great. Our team that participated, myself, I enjoyed it. I really felt it valuable. And so our staff-friendly targeted learning focus is that by the end of the school year, all pre-K students will increase engagement within the school environment. Growth will be measured according to a rubric in the areas of play, teacher-directed activities, and social interactions. So we really were told that we had to come up with something that all of our students could demonstrate. And we have a wide variety of students in our building, and engagement was the one area where we felt like we could really target. And we have to get students to engage before they can move on into kindergarten. So our student friendly focus is the play, explore, learn. So that is our instructional excellence piece. And so for data and accountability, this looks a little different than the other buildings. We do not do state assessments. In our building, we have portfolio assessments that the teachers do by observations and working with children. But one of the big things that we are held accountable for in our program is through the state. They monitor every Preschool for All program, typically every 3, sometimes 4 years. And when they monitor us, they come to our building, they go into every single teacher's classroom and stay in there for an entire session, and they rate our teachers on several areas. I didn't even count all the areas. There's probably at least 30 areas that they look at, and then they provide a report afterwards to let us know how we did. So after we got our scores, we were able to take a look at the areas of strength for us. So, and these are just some of the areas that they look at. Individualized teaching and learning. We scored high in that area. It's a score out of 7. Transition and wait times. That would be transitioning to one activity or another, sometimes from the classroom to the gym, and wait times in between different activities during the school day. And then free play. So our children have a lot of free play choice time where they're learning and they're working with staff to learn lots of things, but that is one area where our staff scored really high. And then staff and child interactions, which we did a lot of work on professional development with, just to kind of talk about how to elicit language with our students, because our staff have to constantly work with kids to get them to interact with each other and our staff. And then areas for growth that came out, furnishings for care, play, and learning. We scored lower in that area. Math and daily events, that's kind of integrating math in daily events, daily things in the classroom, not really a math lesson. And then a block area scored low, and we kind of disagree with some of the ratings on these. It's very technical. And then nature and science, just the nature and science centers that we had scored a little bit low. But there were many, many, many other areas, and we overall did really well in this assessment. So we also have committees in our building, and our equity committee this year really is trying to advocate to add additional family liaisons for our MLL families. We see a lot of need in our building for this, and one of the 2 district French liaisons for the district spends a lot of time in our building. She's amazing. And we also see an increase in families that are, Concaball families, and it's really difficult to provide them support. And then they also provided some professional development to our staff, focusing on equitable practices in early childhood, such as MLL, disability, and gender, looking at all of those areas, examining current school practices for equitable engagement, and changing systems that may prevent family accessibility to programming and events. One of the things that they tied with our family engagement committee was, and Angela knows about this, I should say Dr. Ward, I'm very sorry. She worked with us on this as well, but we really looked at our family engagement events to see who is not attending and why. And we realized that some of our families aren't attending because they may have a child with autism and has a lot of sensory issues or had difficulty in big events like that. And what can we do in the future to help those families or have some kind of area where it's more safe or more family friendly for them, or which families don't have transportation? Is that the reason why they're not coming? How can we provide transportation? Or possibly making maybe we don't have somebody at that event that speaks their language. So we're really taking a deep dive into that and trying to increase our family engagement. And then also providing quality and equitable instruction for all students by fighting to keep our program intact and not moving the dual language program or other classrooms into elementary buildings. That was one of their goals. Family engagement, this committee has been very, very busy. We've done a lot at CECC, and since I've been there's a lot of events. One of the things that I think is really fun for our building and speaks really highly of our the Champaign Kiwanis Club, they have a commitment to our building and have provided funding for books for us to purchase for our students that they can keep. And they also come and provide what we call a lunch bunch event. They do 2 of these with us where all their members come and they serve pizza. The families come and enjoy, pizza with their child and the students and the other students and the staff. And it's just, all the kids get a book and it's just a kind of a fun event. And then we also, we of course did we have a fall festival and also a spring pop-up festival, our play date at Hessel Park. This was something that came from some of our parents during a panel a couple years ago. Really, they communicated that they would just like to have an opportunity to have kind of a play date, a big play date with all the families and meet the other families and students that their child is playing with. And we had a NAPIT event as well, and that was well attended. They just highlighted a few here, I guess. And they also wanted to, they provided their learning focused statement connection was providing opportunities to practice social and play engagement both inside and outside of school. And then we have a culture and climate committee, along with supporting, social emotional learning throughout our school. They also really worked with staff to help support them. We did a big school-wide vote to determine a school mascot and some colors and included the students in all of that. So we had not had that up to this point. So our new school mascot is a butterfly, and the school colors are now purple and teal. And that logo in the center there is our new logo for Champaign Early Childhood Center. So we will be working to put that on the, just branding it everywhere that we can in the district or in the school. They also help support staff by, coming up with some potlucks and secret pals and things like that. And then one thing they did that has been really helpful is by supporting our staff by they put together a folder for teaching assistant expectations, which was really helpful to our teachers, providing trainings to volunteers, lesson plan examples, and then they also recorded a mock IEP meeting over Zoom to share with new staff, kind of as a model to run IEP meetings, and that was really great. And then finally, our Student Learning Committee. They're really committed to what they're doing. They created trainings for staff to help prepare us for the state monitoring visit. We did a lot of that in the fall. And then they also did a collaboration with our district kindergarten IEP case managers to kind of work to ease the transition and create better and more meaningful IEPs for our students that are moving on to kindergarten. They created a developmental summaries form and a kind of a procedure for referring students for extra services. So that would be for teachers to refer children that they have concerns. It's just looks a little bit different in our building, and they came up with a really nice procedure for that. Worked in tandem with Focus Schools to guide staff through choosing a targeted learning goal and a rubric to measure that student growth and evidence-based practices. facilitated a training and discussion around the changing need of our incoming students and the high amount of support needs in each room. And what that refers to, and I think, when I talk to other early childhood programs around the state, we are really seeing a lot of results from COVID now. These are the kids, these are the COVID babies we're seeing, and they did not have a lot of interaction with others. And as a result, they really have a lot of high needs. We're seeing kids that don't know how to communicate at all. And so we have had to adjust. We actually had a session called Adjusting for Needs. And teachers really had to kind of give up things that they've done before, and it was really hard for them, because this is how I do pre-K, but that wasn't working. And so we really did a mindset shift somewhere in late fall, and it was kind of a relief to everybody. And then they started, we started an introductory training in neurodiversity and neuroaffirming practices, and that will also continue next year. And then they also visited Urbana Early Childhood School, kind of just to check them out, what are some great things they're doing, and what ideas can we bring back to our school. So then I put a slide in here about the expansion, because as you know, we are working to expand the preschool programming in our district. So in the CECC building, with the end of Head Start's lease at CECC, as a matter of fact, they are now moved out of our building. We've gained 3 additional classrooms and other spaces. With this, we're able to unify our program with the move of our former classroom over at Stratton, so that teacher is moving into CECC. And then this past year, one of our teachers had to use our teacher's lounge for a classroom. That classroom had previously been at Garden Hills, and it was kind of a long story, but we needed a space for them, so they ended up in the lounge, which is not ideal. Our lounge had to move to a part of our library, which is also not ideal. We're really cramped for space. So that teacher will now be there, and we're also adding an additional pre-K teacher at CECC. So previously we were serving up to 360 children. We're now going to be able to serve up to 392 children in that building alone. And then at Garden Hills, we are adding 2 full-day preschool classrooms. So those are students that will be able to attend that program the same hours of the rest of the children in Garden Hills. And we'll add up to an additional 36 children. So we'll keep those classroom sizes at about 18. And those children in the full-day classrooms required by the grant, which Linda and I are working very hard to write right now for the Preschool for All expansion grant. The requirement of those children to be in the full-day programs is that they're your most at-risk children. So those risk factors that I mentioned before, we have to, they get a score, and we really are you have to look at the ones that are the most at risk is what that program is intended for. And then we are working to add 2 full-day preschool classrooms over at IPA, or International Prep Academy. Same thing, another 36 children. So we are adding a total of 104 additional slots of pre-K, which will bring our total Unit 4 preschool slots to 464. And that is it. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes.
Do you guys track your kids once they get, graduate and go on to kindergarten? And then second part of that is, do you have data that shows, how kids are performing, succeeding who went to early childhood versus similar demographics who didn't?
Yeah, and I've heard from many principals, in the past few years, that there are children that show up to kindergarten that have never had any type of school experience. And I know Craig here, who was just here, he would say all the time, we've got to have more pre-K, and he's right, because it is a significant difference. Yes, we do track and follow them, to see how they perform in kindergarten and on up. And sometimes that kids' assessment data, we can, look at the kids that's the assessment that's performed in kindergarten. We can kind of see how they did in or their kids' assessment data, the ones that we've had in our program as well. So that, and it is definitely the data shows that preschool is a necessity for all kids. So,
and that CECC is an often sought place for said needs. Definitely, we've heard that nonstop. I
It
don't know,
is.
so many testimonials from parents and others about the work that happens there. So
Yes,
always a need.
yes.
Please, Ms. Armstrong.
Thank you. There's a special place in my heart for this. So, the placement and the risk criteria, I guess that was my concern with spreading the program. This is probably more for Dr. Boozer, is place. I would not want to see CECC become self-contained. So I'm assuming that as the risk factors pop up and eligibility pops up, you balance the placement among Garden Hills, IPA, CECC. Am I making sense?
There's criteria that we have to follow, and
Right.
so we don't want any of them to be that, but we have to see what the data shows, what the criteria is, and do our best to balance it, because sometimes it might be easier to have a child in a half-day program
Right.
instead of having it versus a full-day program. So we'll have to look at that and determine and see how that falls out.
Yeah, because you want to balance having typically developing peers.
Yep.
Yeah. There. But just a note that, I mean, I think all of education is sacred, holy work, but especially where you are meeting parents typically in grief or with overwhelming needs, especially when you're doing those assessments. And the teachers in that building are delivering some of the hardest news we will ever receive. And so the work they're doing is overwhelming, even just in the social emotional piece to the family to support the child. It's an incredible program. So I'm really hoping your teachers and you all do self-care to keep yourselves up. And you said play date. It was the one place, the one and only time we were invited to play dates, because we get disconnected once we leave that building. So I think it would be interesting if you follow that play date opportunity and push that into the kindergarten, to put that on the radar for teachers in the gen ed classroom to make sure that students are included, invited to those situations. I think that overwhelming voice of play date, it matters. It matters a lot. So
Yes.
thank you for doing that.
Absolutely, and thank you for, commending the work of my staff. They're amazing. I was not a pre-K teacher. There's a reason I wasn't. I don't know how they do what they do. It is very demanding, hard work, but they love it, and they're wonderful with our families. And every time I sit in an IEP meeting, I hear so many positive things about those children, and they know that how important it is for families to hear the good stuff too. It's hard to sit in those meetings and hear the hard stuff. And also, I do want to say that the kids that are at risk doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to be, a model for other students. It just means their family might have a lot of risk factors, kind of working against them. But a lot of those kids come to us, and they come with great pre-academic skills. They just have a lot going on in their life. So,
Yeah, I think it's
And I'm glad you brought that out, because that's exactly the correct response. Just because you hit one of those risk factors, and personally, this is my soapbox, at risk of what? I don't like that term, but it is what it is.
Yep.
So we have to just look through that list, but it doesn't mean necessarily that your child is going to have a learning disability.
Right.
It just means if we don't intervene and provide academic access to quality education, then the risk factors that are there could cause a spiral. So that's why I'm glad to have this. And I also wanted to address Ms. Holder's question regarding how do we kind of assess whether or not our students are doing well. Well, until we, as a system, not Unit 4, but the state of Illinois and other states have kindergarten readiness standards that everybody agrees upon, it's going to be difficult. So the goal right now is for us as a system, now I'm speaking Unit 4, to look at what does it mean to be kindergarten ready to enter Unit 4 schools, and then for our preschool programs, any daycares, let them know what that is, and then we can work toward that. Then we can see if we're meeting the goals that our kids need, because that assessment tells us, that's a survey of if our kids are kindergarten ready, but we need to determine what that means and then spread the word so we can be the leading entity in that work. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited that we're expanding And I heard your staff, and I know you want to keep all the kids to yourself, but according to page 14 of the strategic plan,
Yep.
and according to our governor, we are a preschool
Oh,
desert, so
absolutely.
we gotta spread it out. So, and until we get a large building that can house all of our preschool programs, we have to spread the wealth.
Yep.
That's my plug. Thank you.
Could you work on them on that? I don't know how
We
you
are.
change no, not you. The at-risk, because it feels so invasive for parents. And so you walk in, you feel deficit-based. And you guys do change that. Like Heather Oaks was amazing. The staff there was amazing, that because you feel targeted as a parent, like I'm not good enough, you guys completely changed that narrative. Your staff really, that is such intentional work that you do have to spread it out, but it is hard to hear, you're at risk, you're at risk. It's like, I'm not
Yes.
at risk, we're fine, but we're not.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, in most of the states, risk factors that they're, referring to are more environmental and things like that, aside from any academic or delays in, development. But yes, the first day I walked in there after I was hired, Amy Hayden, the former principal, had me come for a day, and the diagnostic team was there, and it was like late June, and they're in there working with families, and I sat in on some meetings, and I was just so impressed with how they just make everybody feel comfortable and highlight all the good stuff and reassure families that their child is going to be just fine, and they're getting what they need, and they'll continue to get what they need. So, yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Fantastic job. And yes, you were solo, but you handled it.
Right.
Great job. Thanks.